It's been a few months since the new Turo All-Star host requirement was announced. And like you, I've had some time now to think and also prepare about how I'm going to deal with these changes. And it's time to talk about it. Now, again, if you guys are interested in checking out the car sharing masterclass, you can do so by clicking the link down in the description below, and you can use the code OFFER100 to get $100 off. Now, I've been asked this question by a few people, and the question is, did me and my team make All-Star host? And the answer is unfortunately no. Whenever these new All-Star host requirements were initially announced, we were all hopeful that we would be able to meet All-Star host status, but pretty quickly into the new implementation of the new policy, it became very clear that it would be very, very difficult to reach and sustain this status. One, because of unrated trips, which is definitely still an issue that's bogging us down, but two, because of maintenance ratings, which I will talk about here in a moment because no, we don't have maintenance problems with our cars. Now, for those of you who may or may not be aware, Turo changed their All-Star host ranking requirement late last year. And as of just a couple of weeks ago, this change is officially in effect, as hosts are now either a All-Star host or they're not an All-Star host based off of this new requirement. Some of the changes that Turo made with this program is previously you had to have 90% of all rated trips be 5-star reviews, but now you have to have 85% of all of your trips being 5-star reviews. So now basically Turo is counting unrated trips against you, and this metric is very, very difficult to achieve. The reality is a lot of guests, and from what I've gathered for many hosts, this can be anywhere between 5 to 25% of all of their guests just simply don't rate their trips. And while I think this could be for a variety of reasons, including just not using the app, not having stable internet, forgetting, Turo has come to the conclusion that if a trip is unrated, this in turn means that this guest is unhappy with the trip. At least that's how they treat these types of ratings. And they have come to this conclusion based off of their data that shows that trips that are unrated are much less likely to return for a second or third time, which I would argue is an example of correlation, not causation, but we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Now, before I dive into my thoughts on this actual rating system and how it's impacting my fleet, I first want to mention that I do in fact believe that the All-Star host program needed to be revamped. It was far too easy to achieve, it was becoming watered down, and I think changing that and raising the bar to entry, it was important. But I think that the changes that Turo has made to this All-Star host program, it swings too far in the other direction. And I think that this new program is either unintentionally or intentionally biased towards hosts that either rent out newer cars or hosts that target tourists. But now on to my thoughts and some of the changes that I've implemented in my fleet in order to deal with these changes. So my first thought is my opinion, and that is that I think this new All-Star host program puts hosts that rent out older, economical cars to local renters. It puts them at a disadvantage, point blank, period. Renting out older cars on Turo is sort of a debated on topic because some people believe that older cars shouldn't be on Turo. Others are shocked to hear that I have 15-year-old cars with 150,000 miles on them on the platform. But the reality is, for better or for worse, low-priced, economical cars targeting that budget local renter, it is an important part of the Turo business model. Not only for hosts like myself who rely on this business model, but for Turo themselves. And I really think that we see this disadvantage play out specifically with the maintenance rating and giving guests the ability to rate maintenance. And I fundamentally believe that giving guests the power to either give a guest a poor or positive rating with maintenance, I think it's a mistake. Now, I'm not saying that maintenance safeguards should not be put into place because maintenance is crucial, and having safeguards to flag and even potentially delist cars that have poor maintenance, it's important. However, let's be real. More often than not, guests simply do not know what they're talking about. And I don't think that the power of leaving a maintenance review on vehicles should be placed onto the guest when many guests don't know the difference between a car that's just making a noise versus one that truly has a legitimate problem. I mean, let me give you a few examples. We have a ton of guests who will rent our cars for weeks or even in some cases months at a time, who during their reservation, they'll pick up a nail and the tire light will come on. We'll have them take the car to a local Firestone, or we'll take it there ourselves. We confirm that a nail was in fact picked up, and then at the end of the reservation, the guest returns the car, reviews the trip, and rates us a poor rating for maintenance and cites something like the TPMS light, an issue that they caused. We recently had a guest who hit a curb, blew out the tire, then hit a wall. The car ended up being totaled, and the guest left us a 3-star, 1 on maintenance, citing tire issues. When I went to Turo and explained the situation as well as the approved damage claim, they said that that they couldn't do anything about it and they left the review up. And just recently, we had a guest who rented our older Toyota Yaris, and during this reservation, he sent us a message, asked if the car took diesel. I of course said no, and upon the vehicle's return, he gave us a 4-star for maintenance. The point here I'm trying to make is that guests just oftentimes don't know what they're talking about, and I'm not saying that in the sense that I want to insult my guests or I want to say that they're unintelligent, because that certainly isn't the case. But what I am saying is that if somebody doesn't know whether or not a Toyota Yaris takes diesel or unleaded, should their opinion be trusted when it comes to the overall maintenance of that car? Well, I'd probably say no. While the amount of guests that complain about maintenance issues with my car specifically is still relatively small compared to the total number of trips that my cars take place, there are still more guests than I would like who leave us a 4-star review on maintenance, and then whenever we reach out to ask them what the problem was, they simply say, oh, well, the engine made a noise. And they're extremely vague about what problem they are experiencing. Sometimes they'll even say something like, oh, the car was a bit older. I think that asking a Turo guest about maintenance of the vehicle that they're renting is on par with asking your friend about medical advice whenever they don't have a medical degree, or going on MedMD whenever you have a headache. Sure, we have had really great Turo guests in the past who have identified an issue that one of our cars are having, and they've let us know about that problem, and we've had that problem addressed. We've even had not so great guests that complain about something happening with their car, and that complaint is 100% valid. I'm not saying that there is never an actual maintenance issue that takes place on a Turo trip, because of course it occasionally does happen. But I just think putting weight into the guest's opinion when it comes to something as nuanced as maintenance, I just think it's really frustrating. And you know what else is incredibly frustrating? Hackers. Data privacy has never been more important. At a time where hackers may have stolen the social security numbers of every American. In 2024, the National Public Database was breached, compromising 2.9 billion records. Our most sensitive data stolen and leaked to anybody who wants it. Millions of more Americans are more vulnerable to their identities being stolen, their credit being utilized without their consent, and their personal information being leaked, which is why having a tool like today's sponsor, Aura, is more important than ever. Aura is a smart, simple, all-in-one tool to protect you and your family from identity theft, scams, and online threats. Aura helps keep your information off the dark web, gives you access to safe and secure VPNs for safer internet browsing, sends you alerts so that you know if there ever is something that is of concern or needs to be addressed, and my personal favorite feature is their call blocking spam protection feature, which reduces those annoying spam calls altogether. Stop leaving yourself vulnerable to data breaches. Go to my sponsor, Aura.com, that's www.aura.com/AubreyJanik, to get a 14-day free trial and to see if your data has been exposed. Now, when it comes to maintenance, truthfully, we aren't really changing our process a whole lot in order to deal with this new All-Star Host program. We do take our cars out of commission a bit faster than we used to in order to make sure that we can get ahead of any problems that may arise. But generally speaking, I think that my team does an incredibly good job at handling maintenance and repairs. I think that we have a really efficient process for handling issues that arise out of nowhere, but then I also think that my husband, who really handles our maintenance, is extremely good with dealing with preventative maintenance as well. And so instead of trying to change our maintenance process in order to get better reviews, this is something that we are really trying to address through just better customer service. And this is something that does help quite a bit. Where we do occasionally run into problems is whenever a guest leaves us a 4-star review on maintenance and they didn't say anything about the vehicle during their entire reservation, which still happens more than I would like it to. Now, earlier I mentioned that I think that this new rule is biased towards hosts with newer cars, and so I want to take a moment to talk about that as well. Now, most of my fleet is older cars. If you've seen my videos before, you know this, and most of my fleet is basic economy cars as well. But over the years, I have started to accumulate more and more newer and nicer cars. In fact, as we speak, I have more newer cars than I've ever had in my fleet. And no, this wasn't done in response to this new All-Star Host program. It's sort of just coincidental. I bought a 2018 Lincoln Navigator in 2023 for tax reasons, and then bought a 2020 Honda Odyssey in 2024 for the same reason. And I'm currently managing a 2017 Lincoln MKC on the Turo platform for my dad. We do offer delivery on the Odyssey and the Lincoln Navigator, but nothing else. And I gotta be honest, the dynamic of renting out a car to somebody who's using it for vacation or date night versus to someone who's using it because they don't have a car, because they can't afford a car, because they need to get from point A to point B, the dynamic is just different. And I kind of compare the difference to something similar to like going to the grocery store versus going out to eat at a nice restaurant. You go to the grocery store to buy your groceries so that you can survive. Many of my economical renters are renting my cars to survive because Dallas doesn't really have public transportation and they need my cars in order to function, in order to get to work, pick up their kids from school, run errands. Unlike my nicer cars, which are rented it out for date night, a vacation. It's very much a want and not a need. And this dynamic in the world of reviews is sort of similar to the same reason why you're not going to go leave your local Kroger grocery store a 5-star review, or you're not going to leave your Kroger after grocery shopping and say, wow, that was an amazing experience. But you may have that reaction, and you probably will go leave a review if you go eat at a fancy steakhouse. And I think that this dynamic does lead to less reviewed trips for lower tier cars, even if hosts are reaching out to guests asking for that review, because we text and we message our guests multiple times for reviews. But there are some guests that after the trip is over, they aren't going to interact with the Turo app no matter what. And those guests are more frequently guests renting out lower economy cars. Now, and I want to emphasize that even with these differences in mind with these two different types of business models, if push came to shove and I had to choose which business model to go head first into, I would still choose the economy business model. I wholeheartedly believe that this is the best business model for Turo, even if this business model typically leads to kind of worse reviews overall. The economical business model has a higher margin, higher profit, it's easier to scale, and I think it's overall less risky. But with higher end cars, you just generally get higher reviews, and that's just kind of how it is. Because I would argue that we are giving these two sets of guests the exact same experience, but the perception of renting out a 2018 car versus a 2012 one is just very different. Now, when it comes to getting more reviews, like I mentioned, we do message them in the app and we also text them directly. We use a platform called Fleet, which is a partner of the channel, and they handle our automated text for us. If you want to check them out, you can do so by clicking the link down in the description below. We've also been using this time to just overall improve our fleet, taking feedback from reviews and really working towards improving the issues that guests are experiencing. An example of this is we recently replaced the entire interior of our Mazda 5. We're doing the same thing with a number of our vehicles as well. And we do consistently look at our Turo reviews to see where we can improve, and we take actionable steps in order to do that. For example, like I mentioned, in November of last year, we noticed our cleanliness rating was lower than we'd like. So not only did we start replacing older interiors with newer ones, something that's surprisingly affordable if you can find seats at junkyards like this Mazda 5 was only $300 for the entire interior set. But we also started being more mindful about the scents that we use in cars, and we started buying new scent sprays from chemical guys, spritzing the cars before they go out on rentals, and that is something that has been surprisingly effective. So we are absolutely looking about how and where we can make fleet improvements when necessary. But like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell, and I'll see you guys in the next video.